Welcome to Crawlspace. I'm Tim here today with Lance. Lance, how's it going today?
It really couldn't be better. How are you today?
The same. Couldn't be better.
Good.
And especially because we have such a wonderful guest on, and this audio is taken from our live Get Vocal night, which was we recorded it about a month ago, and we have the very special guest, Heather Bish.
I know. What a great guest. What a great human being. The Get Vocal night was amazing. The room was packed, and we just want to thank everybody who joins our Thursday night Get Vocals. We try to get as many guests there that can provide some stimulating conversation, especially someone like Heather, who lost her sister, Molly Bish. Molly Bish disappeared on June 27th of the year 2000, and her body was recovered on June 9th of 2003, and this was in a small town of Warren, Massachusetts. And Heather has become an advocate for so many things. She's the director of Project Forward at Cape Cod Community College, and she's a doctor as well.
She is extremely impressive. She fights legislatively for her sister's justice. She pushes for a familial DNA bill, and it's really impressive the work that she's done on that. And also with the Molly Bish Center at Anna Marie College is pretty amazing. I mean, they just never stop advocating for Molly Bish. Okay, and we're going to break this up into two parts. So this is part one. Part two will be out tomorrow. And Bill Thomas, our good friend Bill Thomas from Mind Over Murder, jumps on for the second part of this.
And the thing about Bill Thomas jumping on is very indicative of these Get Vocal nights. They're very interactive. There are 4 screens, so you can hop on and you can contribute. And once you're done, you can ask some questions. Once you're done, someone else can come on. So it's like this rotating thing. It's super fun, and everybody's welcome to hop on and interact with us.
And Bill, of course, is an advocate himself for his sister's case. His sister, Kathy Thomas, was murdered as part of the Colonial Parkway murders. And make sure to check out his podcast, Mind Over Murder, which is amazing, and it's on the Crawlspace Network.
Him and his partner, Kristen Dilly, do a great job together, great chemistry, and it's very fun to hear their dynamic. So, yeah, check that show out. It's amazing.
That's true. And Kristen's also a teacher, just like Heather Bish. And so I hope you enjoy this episode with Heather Bish, and thank you very much. Heather Bish, we spoke with you a few months ago on our show, and of course your sister Molly Bish was murdered, and she went missing ultimately about 20 years ago, almost exactly 20 years ago now. So again, just want to welcome you to the show, and I guess I know there was a vigil recently at Commons Pond, and I'm just wondering how that was.
It was actually quite beautiful. We're trying to keep it COVID responsible by keeping it small. And, my parents are older now, so I'm really protective of their health. So we decided to do sort of a moving vigil and take cars and drive from my parents' house to Commons Pond. But we also asked people to paint a rock in memory of Molly. Molly was very kind. She loved everybody. She really believed in underdogs. She was one of those motivating persons that, on the baseball team or just in life. She was just, one of those people that really inspired you and made you happy to be around her. She was funny and silly and goofy. And so we thought, well, wouldn't it be great to do these kindness rocks in memory of Molly, of her kindness, and maybe even about safety, and keep talking about safety. And it's really important, I think, that we continue those conversations as parents and caregivers and aunts and uncles. We just need to make sure that unfortunately now, that our children are cognizant of the dangers that are out there.
And you were on our show a little while ago, and it was easily the most emotional show in retrospect that Tim and I have ever done. While it was happening, we were taking it as it was coming, but it's the only interview that I think, maybe I'm speaking for Tim as well, but it's the only interview that I've walked away from and still it still resonated. Like, I'll still to this day lay in bed and think about that interview because of some of the very simple things that you said that we never hear from secondary victims like this, which is when you had said the first night that Molly was missing, you simply didn't know how to go to sleep. And we never hear that. And it's like the simplest thing.
How do you go home without your sister or your daughter or your best friend? Even think about Molly's friends who were 16 years old and they had to go home with their moms and dads. My brother, I mean, he will kill me if I hears this, but he was only 19 and his best friend literally slept in bed with him that night at my parents' house. Like, you are shocked and scared and terrified. I mean, there's nothing. I think there's nothing anyone can do but be with you. And so, I mean, I'm so grateful for my people that have been with me this whole time, literally. And my brother too. I think that's how we've sort of survived this. And we were lucky in 2006. My parents had always been involved with the National Center, and there was a group that was like parents that got together and sort of helped each other. And I kept asking from like 2000 to 2006, what about the kids? Like, where are they? Because I only know about that kid that had that movie. I know my name is Steven or something, and he didn't end up so well. So I was really freaked out. Like, I'm like, and I hadn't met like anybody else's siblings in Massachusetts. So as John and I were very fortunate, we ended up meeting families from across the country that experienced the same kind of thing, you know, maybe different ages, but their sibling had been abducted. And that was like probably the most healing experience of my life, because, you know, you meet people who have siblings that die from cancer or other tragedies, car accidents. And that empathy and loss is not any different, but the experience of the trauma that we went through, you know, like your parents giving you Christmas presents for years from your sibling. Like, when you say mom and dad, that's like not cool to do anymore, you know? So there was things that they knew about that nobody could really know, just because your sibling's missing, you know, they're not, it's so ambiguous. It's so, it's difficult for everybody. You know, so I think everybody grieves differently or handles it differently, but I think just, you know, being there, we were just lucky to have people there with us. And that was demonstrated in Molly's vigil this past year, with people, you know, coming in their cars. And, you know, we've had our Senator Ann Goby and our Representative Todd Smola have been literally with us from the very beginning of this whole thing. I mean, I think of them almost as family, not as these like people in this important position of leadership, but they have really truly supported us. And that's what I think a leader should do, is really get down into those issues. And I think it has helped them learn about what's needed in government. I mean, we've dealt with Amber Alert and police trainings and all kinds of trying to change the license plates in Massachusetts. So they've been supportive through this the entire time. So I think, you know, support has been the most important and helpful thing. And that was probably a long answer, right?
No, that was a great answer.
Yeah.
I am Maggie Bish's daughter. I don't know if anyone's ever talked to her or whatever before, but she is.
So you just mentioned Ann Goby, who's a Massachusetts senator from Worcester, and we've been planning to do this live show. We wanted to have her on with you. This live show that's going to probably happen sometime next year at the Brick Box Theater in Worcester. It's a brand new theater. We were supposed to do it over the summer, and then it got pushed, but we wanted to have Ann Goby on, and we ended up having a call with her. And how many people have we interviewed, Tim, on the show? Like I don't know how many people I've interviewed just from doing these shows. I was terrified, by the way. The second Ann Goby said a word, I was simultaneously terrified, and I felt like I was about 1.5 feet tall. It was because she's just sharp. She's just like,
yeah.
She's a senator.
Yeah, no, she's great. It wasn't her vibe that was intimidating. It was like that. Oh, we're really having a call with a senator
Call a
right now.
senator?
What is going on?
and she's
That
and
was what
she's
it
just
was.
like, she's just asking the questions, and it just, when you realize that that's not the arena that you're meant to be in, it's just like, I need to I need to get out of here. I'm doing more harm than good right now.
Usually when I go to the state house, I immediately go to the shower too. It's a rough business, Jason.
Oh,
You
really?
have to be strong
Oh my god, I bet.
and extra strong if you're a woman.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess tell us a little bit about this bill, if you don't mind.
I've been trying to figure out ways to find a murderer, in 20 years, and DNA has really become a really incredible tool for law enforcement to solve these cases, particularly these older cases. So it really sparked an interest with me, and I talked to my detectives, and they said we could use a law like that in Massachusetts, and I wasn't I'm a teacher. I don't really particularly know anything about law enforcement or laws or writing laws or forensics or anything. But I do want to find the bad guys. And I have these, incredible privilege to share my story, and in so doing, hopefully inspire people to want to do those right things. And that's what I'm doing. So I came across this, and I started writing a bill. And I don't really know how to write a bill, but I did it. I don't, again, know anything about forensics, but I took some ideas from other states, and I gave it to my incredibly awesome senator, Ian Goby, and I said, I think we need to do this. And meanwhile, I had met with the district attorneys from Massachusetts and the chiefs of police and talked to them about it. And, they felt strongly, Massachusetts it's not California or Kentucky. It's just different. We're very litigious here. So, they just felt better if we had this law. And so basically familial DNA, by the way, means we have this CODIS system. It's a national database where all these felons go into. And so if you have a match, bam, you get your bad guy. But if you have a partial match, you kind of like throw that away. But familial DNA uses that partial match and says, okay, well, then somebody in this family committed this. So then you start just doing like really good police work, and you start looking at like cousin Eddie or Uncle Johnny and see who was in the area of the victim, who had a relationship or any ties to the victim, and you get their DNA, and then it's pretty much yes or no. It's science, which is the beauty of this tool for law enforcement, because it's actually, as much as we, I think there's been conversations about it violating rights, which I'm not even sure about what people are talking about, because I feel like everybody knows everything right now anyway. So, but it actually exonerates people who've been, wrongly incarcerated. So it's just a really solid tool. And I just think it's sort of a no-brainer. So Senator Goby filed the bill, and we actually had it looked, we are fortunate in Massachusetts to have this forensic oversight committee. And so they looked at the bill and actually like edited it like for what they really need, which is what I want. Ultimately, I just want this to happen like in the best way possible for the organization. If a scientist was writing a teacher bill, I would hope that they would want my input on it as a teacher, and then move forward with the bill. So that's what they did. They edited the bill. So I'm sure with the timing and COVID, we're going to have to refile it again next year. But maybe with some of the energy of what's happening right now with these police bills, I think right now that police bill in Massachusetts has over 200 amendments in the House. I don't know that they're ever going to get out of debate to get this off the ground, which is unfortunate because there's so much work to do with the police. So I feel like maybe there's like a couple, maybe branches or a bigger bill that needs to take place, because I'm concerned about, this is just my little piece of it, but I'm concerned about law enforcement being trained in missing children's investigations. Still in Massachusetts, our local police are not trained in this. And that was our greatest issue with Molly's case. Law enforcement did not react. Molly was working for the town. She was an honor roll student, working 2 jobs, played 3 sports. Like, I don't know why someone would think that this kid's like doing drugs in the woods or taking off with her friends or in Florida. I could see drowning, but if they actually knew the victim, they would know that she didn't actually like to swim in ponds. Or, Molly's shoes were left at the crime scene. So she was not one of those people that walked around with like icky feet or grassy, which she didn't want to feel the earth or do any of that grounding stuff. Whenever shoes on, not touch anything icky. If they knew the victim more, I think they would have understood the seriousness. But no one called my parents for 3 hours. So, and that guy, he's a police chief now. So I hope he learned his lesson, and I hope he reacts differently now. I hope he's a different officer, and I hope that we all grow and learn from our experiences. But I also think that there needs to be a little more consideration about these kinds of things, because negligence can happen and there's dire consequences. Maybe Molly wouldn't be dead if someone had called right away. We had looked for her right away. I mean, 76% of kids who are abducted by a stranger are dead in the first 3 hours. We weren't even called in the first 3 hours.
What was that? That statistic is from the year 2000, like leading like
The National
cross
Center.
section up to that period.
That's our statistic today. 76.
That's a statistic today.
Mm-hmm. Are killed in the first 3 hours of an abduction by a stranger. So time is of the essence. So you really need to react. So when my dad, before he had the stroke, went around talking and training law enforcement, he said, overreact. Yeah, if the kid ran away or if the kid's like, I don't know, blowing off steam somewhere, who cares? Like, at least they're alive, because the other consequence is not. So like, how you want to like gamble that? I don't know. I would overreact. It's a kid.
Yeah. The thing is, like, you're talking about something that happened in the middle of the year in 2020 years ago, and you're still giving a statistic that I would have thought that would have been from the 80s, would have been from a time when we could actually use that excuse that small town police departments are underfunded, and hey guys, they only have 4 police officers. What do you expect them to do? Well, maybe in the last few decades something could change and there could be funding for maybe another organization that's not called the police department or something, because we can't seem to get a grip on that.
Yeah. I mean, we just come up with they do just come up with excuses. And I'm an educator. I come from a field where we have a difficult child, we have the reading specialist, the 4th grade teacher, the gym teacher, the special ed teacher, whatever. Like, we all come together and try to figure out how to help this kid. Like, law enforcement doesn't do that, and it makes me crazy. And so I think there are so many changes that need to go into this new bill for the police, and it might take a little bit longer than what's happening next week.
And it shouldn't have anything to do with maybe this young woman, the 16-year-old child, was smoking weed in the woods, or she probably ran away or something like that. Maybe that shouldn't even be a consideration, but it really is frustrating that is usually the consideration. I mean, we do so many of these stories where we hear from law enforcement and they say, just family members over here, 2 officers say, she probably ran away. Oh, he probably ran away. Oh, he'll be back. Probably ran away with a boyfriend. Like, just do your job for like 2 days. Just really, really focus for 2 days. And you'll find that the person probably didn't just run away.
Right. I don't know. I have this compulsion. It's probably not healthy. But I go back and I try to look at what did I miss? What did I miss? Because I have investigators that are new all the time. So I'm the only consistency in this case. The only one that remembers everything and every, major character. I don't have all the police's information, but, some of these guys they don't even know what I'm talking about half the time. So I went back and I found that John Conte, who was our district attorney, had talked about paint on a rock like a week after Molly disappeared. And I'm like, where's the paint? Where's the rock? I mean, we can now match. Like, we have tests now that could match. Like, there's different paint in Buicks and Subarus and, Chevys. Again, I'm just science. Like, I just feel like science has these tools that can really, we just like use some more, I don't know, different logic.
Yeah. And Michelle in the chat room is a prosecutor from the state of New York, and she's a little blown away that this bill DNA familial search tool isn't of use yet in Massachusetts. She said it's such an important tool, and it's not a new DNA test. It's an adjustment of the state DNA indexing database, and that still protects the rights of the offenders in the database while helping law enforcement pursue new leads.
And I do believe that some DAs are using this covertly. And I do believe that, if push came to shove, it would be okay. And I have talked to all kinds of, I have this kind of new friend, Rock Harmon, out in California, who is one of these big guys who sort of leads the charge and does all the training in this familial and using genetic DNA in these cases. And he's so smart and so amazing. And I'm just lucky that, I just have these things that bring us together. But so I pick his brain a lot, and he's like, you definitely don't need a law. And so I've reached out. I've literally met with the colonel of the state police. I've met with the forensic lab people. I've met with everyone. And it seems in Massachusetts that they feel that a law is the best bet. And I don't know, again, I'm just sure.
And Jason said sometimes it's because they have personal issues going on at the time, so the police assume they run away to get away from those issues. I agree, but I don't think that it's the police. I don't think it's the place of the police to assume something and say, well, that's going to influence my investigation in the immediate aftermath of it. In the week or 2 weeks after something happens, police shouldn't be operating on assumptions.
No, especially when someone's working for your town. She's 16. I mean, come on. I mean, if she was 34, I don't even know if that would even be better, because right. She's still working for your town. What happens if the town manager goes missing? What do we do?
Right. These are great points.
I mean, I don't know. What if the chief of police goes missing? What the hell?
Yeah, it's a great point.
What's the difference? I mean, it's bias. She's 16. It's simply just bias. And that is the major problem. I mean, I think that, we can come up with all these sort of things for the police, but we really need to go really much deeper. And we need to think about training, education, and, trauma. Let's talk about how traumatized police officers are. Why did that guy think about, I always try to turn perspectives a little bit. And so I think, why did that guy say that? Maybe he had dealt with a lot of runaways. Maybe he chased down a lot of kids a lot. I don't know. But I do see that, I think, as an educator and someone who's worked with children and people for 20 years, that trauma definitely impacts us more than, we think. And all of us, every single one of us. And, I think we really need to sort of talk about that elephant in the room and with police, because you can't tell me when you're going to pick up 4 bodies of 4 babies who were burnt by some crazy person that doesn't fuck you up for a while.
Totally.
It's impossible. It's impossible.
Totally. We have a good friend of ours, Cloyd Steiger, who is a homicide detective in Seattle, and he's written a bunch of really amazing accounts, true stories. He's written a couple of books about, just his experience in being in homicide for 30 plus years, 40 years. And we had him on one of these programs, one of the Get Vocals, and he just sort of seemed a little perplexed that there was even trauma within police officers, within the department. He said, we'd go out and we'd do stuff, and then we'd just go to a bar and blow off some steam, and everything's fine. And he really is this guy. We call him Uncle Cloyd, because he'll be talking about,
or a functioning alcoholic, which is much more what I see with these police officers. And I'm not trying to bash them. I'm not. I love police officers. I'm grateful for them, but I do see that as a major coping mechanism, and it's not
right.
Cool, man.
Right.
Because they have a position of power, and then they're driving home drunk from the bars, feeling pretty powerful. And
yeah, I think
hopefully they don't hurt your kid. Hopefully they don't hit, hopefully they don't hit anything or anybody. But they're just as vulnerable as everybody. They're not superhuman. And that's the thing. If you're going to find bodies and you're counting bodies and you're going to crime scenes every day, that takes a toll on anybody. and a police officer is still just a person.
Right. Right. And when he said that, I think Tim and I both had the same reaction. We're like, really? Really? I mean, I know I'm just like a podcaster, but really, you can you can just walk away from that?
I think he's a different kind of guy. Like he would say stuff like, well, if you have to like, talk to a therapist after that, then you're probably in the wrong line of business. So he might be from a little bit of the old West in that sense. He's a cowboy who can't or at least doesn't admit that he needs to discuss his feelings in that way.
I've been reading a lot about cognitive dissonance lately. Have you guys heard about that?
Yes. Yeah. This keeps popping up recently.
Lance loves it.
I love it. I'm going to do it a few times during this interview. My favorite thing. But I'm going to Google what it is.
But I think you are right about some police officers and some, maybe even some federal agents and things like that at times. I think they're, they don't do drugs like some people use as vices. But I think there is a drinking culture there. And I think that is one way that they cope for sure.
Yep, absolutely. It's very disconcerting.
Before it gets lost, Criminal Perspective had a comment. I'm scrolling.
It was about Rodney Stanger.
Rodney Stanger. Yeah, I just wanted to get the right wording here. I can't find it. Criminal Perspective wanted to know what the status was with Rodney Stanger.
Yeah, he said.
Well, actually, I had a recent update that, as you know, I worked with Bob Ward to get down to Rodney Stanger's trailer, and in 2013 they were supposed to be doing testing on the items in that trailer, and at one point they told me, we're not going to talk to you about DNA, Heather. So I was like, what the heck? What do you mean? I've been calling you every day for like 6 weeks, and my friend Kathy Kern has been calling you every day too. She's the Channel 5 reporter, like trying to get the answers here. Like, we think this is the guy, we're waiting, and nothing. So I think there was some sort of communication problem with the lab that occurred that, wasn't, didn't come out for a few more years. But this is sort of the ebb and flow of working with law enforcement. You get like pieces of information. It's not like, it's funny when people will say, oh, well, I turned in information, they never got back to me, Heather. And I'm like, guys, they don't even tell me stuff. Like, I talk to them maybe once a year. And then mostly if I get leads from like Facebook or something, I send it to them. And if I ask, maybe they'll give me an answer, maybe they won't. Mostly they won't. So they didn't tell me anything about that test, and I just assumed nothing was inconclusive or nothing came of it. And I recently learned that a hair from one of the knives in Rodney Stanger's trailers did not match to Molly. It was one allele off, so it was not Molly's hair that was on that knife. Does that completely rule him out? No, but I mean, it's kind of puts him sort of on the back burner a little bit.
Wow.
So
for anybody who doesn't know, can you give a quick background of Mr. Stanger?
Rodney came into my light from a private investigator named Tom Shamshak that was really good friends with my dad. He had been a former chief of police in Spencer and helped start the BU private investigative program. And he came up with this guy, and this guy had, been really abusive. He was from the Southbridge area, lived very close to where Molly took her lifeguarding lessons. So that we think maybe that could have been the way she maybe met him, maybe at Dunkin' Donuts, or she might have run up the street or something. But he ended up just really abusive, really alcoholic, really bad guy. Ended up marrying this girl and moving to Florida and killing her. She called her sister right before she was killed and said that Rodney was involved in some murders and indicated it was Molly and Holly Ukrainian. So the sister, turned that into the police, and the police didn't really do anything with it. So she somehow got connected with Bob Ward from Fox, who ended up following through and looking into this and saying, hey, this is really interesting person. So, they followed that through, and they ended up, that was like 2009. And then, he was in jail. So they ended up going down and talking to him, but not really getting anything out of him. And then Bob found out that his trailer was still like wide open, like no one had been there since he was taken. So he went down there, and after he went down there, then the police decided to go down there, and then they found several items. They found some like elastic bands. They thought maybe he could have taken his prizes from little girls. Obviously some knives and weaponry, and then he had a fishing license that was from April of 2000, so right before Molly disappeared, and he looked just like the sketch. So that was really the jarring moment. But again, nothing ever directly linked him to Molly. A lot of circumstances.
You just mentioned Holly Peranian. She was 10 years old, and that was 93, I think.
She was actually the same age as Molly, but she was abducted in 93 when they were both 10. So very interesting. When she was abducted, Molly is the same age, and we went to church, and our priest had said, pray for the family. And Molly, being this really, like I said, really empathetic young woman or girl, wrote this letter to her family and included one of our family pictures from like 1988. I don't know, it's terrible. And sent it to them. And they actually kept it. And so when Molly disappeared, I don't know how they remembered this, but they remembered that little girl who wrote the letter, and they brought it to our house. And their grandmother and the aunt were very proactive in Molly's investigation. And so they really helped develop the Molly Bish Foundation with my parents, and really went out. Karen, Holly's aunt, went out every weekend with my dad. She was really a fantastic start to our center and helping, talk about these cases. And, I think people link Holly and Molly all the time, and it's easy to think, there's one bad guy that, killed a 10-year-old and then, later killed a 16-year-old. I don't think that that's probably true. I get they definitely have a special connection, and that's special for our families. I think that was our gift from them to us. But I don't think that it was the same murderer. I think that there are actually a lot of bad guys out there, and they look like us. They look like your teachers, your coaches, your priests.
Wouldn't it be nice if it was just a single predator and you can say, wow, that wraps that up. We got it, but chances are that's not the case. Can you speak a little bit about the relationship between the two families, between your family and the Peranians? Because I think I'm just looking at the chats here, and I think a lot of people really are uplifted by this part of the story, how the two families came together to do something really great.
Yep, and that's really what happened. They came and brought that picture and that letter over, and it was the beginning. It was the first few weeks of when Molly was gone. So my parents, we were literally at my parents' house. We didn't know what we were doing from one minute to the next. So they helped us. They were like, this happened to us too. And like I said, for just like my brother and I meeting someone that had gone through something like that, that was really so important for my parents. That helped them, and that helped them too. I think it helped them gain their power back. You lose your kid. I mean, how disempowering and helpless can you feel how can someone take your kid? Like, how is that possible to lose your kid in America? And I think that really tied them and united them in a mission to make sure nobody else ever had to experience this. And this guy knew that we were out there rattling the cage and telling everyone to be freaking careful, because there's some bad guys out there.
Yeah. And I can see how you can kind of come together in that same or similar circumstances, being a tragedy like that. One thing you mentioned, a photo of your family that Molly sent to Holly's family. One thing that I noticed from looking at the articles from the vigil that you guys held just recently is that it seemed like you guys were honoring her memory in a not so much a sad way.
Well, for us, it's different. I think for some people, they think about Molly once a year when that time of the year comes around, and you just sort of feel that kind of thing. But for us, for me, it's every day. Every day I am thinking about my sister, when I'm driving somewhere where I think, like I have a doctor's appointment, I think she should be there with me at it. I miss her all the time. Like, I don't need to publicly cry for Molly once a year. I cry all the time and miss my sister. And every day of my life, I work for this. I work for things to be better for others, because I can't live in a world that I can imagine this happening to somebody else. And, so being happy is a reflection. We try to focus Molly's vigils on the good, on what's good. I don't want this guy for one fucking second to feel empowered by making me hurt or broken, or my family broken or sad. I don't want him to feel empowered in any sort of way. And so we celebrate her life. We celebrate what she meant to us, like with the kindness rocks. We celebrate the people that were there for us. Like I talk about Rock Harmon. This person that came out of the woodwork for me. That's happened to me in over 20 years. People just come out and help. And so that's why my favorite saying is that Mr. Rogers saying, look for the helpers, because it's really true. That's what's happened, and that's what's made, us survive. It's made our foundation flourish and my parents' work flourish. And it's made the energy to carry on this work to this day.